Good morning, good afternoon, and today I'm talking to Michael O'Rielly at the FCC. It's a pleasure to talk to you, and it's a great opportunity. It's a really great time with CBRS Commercial Lounge. We've been working for so long, the whole industry. So, can you sort of give us, what's so great about it from your point of view, from a regulatory point
Sure.
of view?
Well, CBS, from my perspective, is a wonderful opportunity to make use of a band that has some difficulties. We have existing incumbents that we couldn't move, and the solution that we came up with, the three-tier selection structure, allows all three entities, the incumbents, licensed and unlicensed, to operate in the same frequencies. That's exciting. We're able to make use of a band that we couldn't before, and what we're able to use it for, especially since it's a mid-band at 3.5 to 3.7, is such a need in the United States. It's going to be exciting to see what innovators use it for, what they take and turn this into. So for my case, we've done our piece at the FCC, and we're excited to see what happens in the marketplace.
And I have to say that was really remarkable, because in a lot of bands, you already have other users, obviously, and you were able to bring them into the fold and work together. So was there much work? I mean, like, now that you've done it.
Absolutely. The process was long and tortuous, and a lot of credit is due to people that worked on this long before I got to the project. So I thank them for their work. And then I picked up the ball and ran with it on a number of different pieces. And we finally came to resolution. And in the last year and a half, we've been working to figure out and solve the size of the PAL licenses, the priority access licenses, how big they should be, geographic size. And we worked through that and got everybody on board, or most everyone on board, with a resolution. So at the end of the day, almost everyone's comfortable with where we're at. And now it's in the hands of the companies, the vendors, the operators, to now see where it can go. Certainly, because we turned on the GAA, and then licenses available next year through auction.
Absolutely. And I think that this is going to be, it's very important, because it's a blueprint moving forward, because you've shown it's possible to work with the incumbents.
It's the first time at such a large scale that we're going to make this available. And I think it's a blueprint for other bands where we cannot clear. Clearing, to me, is still a priority. We need cleared bands, and we're going to push to have cleared bands. But in those instances where you cannot clear, the CBRS model may work very well. And there's a couple bands that come to mind. Congress has teed up new legislation on this in 3.1 to 3.45 and 7 gigahertz bands, where we probably can't clear completely, and where a CBRS model may work. 37 gigahertz may be a place as well. So there are places where this model may work. And it's not only just domestically, but we know a number of countries internationally have been looking at this issue and adopting and considering adoption for their consideration later.
Yeah, and absolutely. And this is really cutting edge, because there's a lot of interest from all the regulators I'm talking to, but it's unclear. So you need to try, and
it's more than a large scale trial.
Yeah,
we know it works. We've done all the testing. We're now in the initial commercial deployment stage, but that is just a short term. We're going to be full on operational in a matter of weeks, and we're excited about that. So we've moved past the testing. We know the ESCs are functional. We know the SASs are functional. This will just give us more data, and over time, I think that data will help us reduce some of the limitations we put on the technology. We hope to increase power, remove some of the technical limitations, and a couple other things we hope to do to make it more, to even give it added benefit going forward.
Yeah, and I guess, even if you look at it, and I want to talk to the licenses in a minute, but if we go sort of step back, there has been more, as you got more comfortable with how it works, everything got much better. So, for instance, at the beginning, the extension zones were much bigger, and you were able to shrink them. And so can you comment, because there is still sometimes the sense that, you can use CBRS only in a few parts of the US, and it's not quite like that.
No, that's right. We worked really hard. I mean, when I first, when I started working on this project, in 2013, 2014, we put up, and it was very telling. We went to an item, and then Chairman Wheeler was considering some structure, and I put up the map. I had them put up the map of where the zones are going to be and what they looked like. It just happened to cover all the coasts. And he and I quickly, and then the rest of my colleagues quickly realized that wasn't sustainable. And we went back and worked really hard. The staff worked really hard to get DoD on board and shrunk those zones, incredibly. So it is going to be extensive. There are places where it will not be operational. We recognize the military installations where it won't be functional, but most of the country will be open for this and open for business.
Yeah, and because the propagation is somewhat limited, so
It's also a
it's not
time function.
yeah,
They're not operating necessarily all the time. That's where you have the ESCs recognizing that the Navy radar is not going to be operating all the time. And so that's the benefit of technology, where in the past we may have to cordon off a zone forever. We can, move to a different technology that lets us use it during the meantime.
And this is important because obviously those users have a legitimate and very important use for the
Very much
band.
so.
So you need to be able
That's
to
right.
protect it. And it's great that everybody has the confidence that it's going to work. So it's so let's move to PAL.
Sure.
So this is like a very recent announcement. So we finally have it. Can you tell us a little bit about how is it going to work?
Yeah, we finally have a date for the auction of June 25th, 2020. We're excited about the auctions. I worked really hard to make them functional, to make them work for everybody. The previous structure at Census Tracks was a little too small and would have excluded a number of players who thought that this band, and rightfully so, would be possible for 5G. There are a lot of naysayers out there saying, you'll never do 5G in this. It's just not the right structure. And actually, it turns out we're going to do 5G, and the standards, and by the end of the year, we're likely to have standard that will be 5G-like for these frequencies. So I'm excited about that. The place that we landed was counties. Licenses will be based on counties. We're also looking at potentially, for lack of a better word, called package bidding, where we make the bidding tool, which is separate from the license size. We're not changing the license sizes. We're keeping them at county, but it's a bidding tool where people may bid on multiple counties at once. And so both those tools were part of the package and the resolution that we got with all the different entities. And I'm pretty happy that we're going to have an auction next year. And then we'll just see where it goes. We have, after the auction is adopted, after our final order is adopted and the auction actually is run, we're going to be in the process of considering all the applications. We go through a long form review, and then hopefully the licenses will be granted, late next year, and people can take forward and go forth and conquer.
And we don't know exactly how it's going to, work out and it's going to do it. But we do know is that there's going to be a secondary market as well.
Oh, absolutely.
And how do you think? Do you think it's possible? But do you expect it to be widely used? Because like for private, CBRS, that could be a very good solution.
Oh, I think it's
because
yes.
You cannot have a license that is small enough.
Well, look at the beauty of our structure is that 70 megahertz for potentially licenses, at least 80 in most markets for GAA, where the 70 is not being used for licenses in some markets where it's not popular or whatever, that's available for GAA too. So you can have big, wide swaths of unlicensed spectrum. But I suspect that the 7 licenses at 10 megahertz a piece for 70 megahertz, I think that's going to be incredibly popular. When I hear from providers, whether they offer private LTE or an IoT service or whatever they want to use it for, they are contemplating not only using it here, but also combining it with spectrum that they may win at C-band if we get that operational, and other things that are the nearby the nearby frequencies, that then they have broader channels to offer their service. They have broader paths to be able to offer services. They talk about having 5G, you need 100 megahertz channels or 100 megahertz spectrum. And I think we want to give them that opportunity. This could be a piece of that.
That could be, it's an important component. Now, when we go, however, back to GAA, my understanding is that you're not mandating any way in which there is coexistence among GAA users. Can you say why is it like, for unlicensed, it's more heavily regulated, that part. Why did you decide to go that way? And
look, this is through a lot of conversation, a lot of consideration to find our landing spot. We describe it as unlicensed like. There's not the listen to me before talk, and there's different things that we've adopted here that are a little different, but we're excited about them, and we've worked with all the interested parties. They're excited about them, and so I really think this will be well received in the marketplace. Devices are generally ready and already ready for operation to get into consumers' hands, in my opinion.
Absolutely. So from your point of view, how important is it going to be how important is going to be the role of the enterprise in the success and deployment of CBRS?
Well, I really don't know. I mean, if you talk about enterprises, it relates to the two key things are having the ESCs operational and then having the SaaS operators and functional. Do I think the SaaS marketplace is going to change? Absolutely. And I think that you can see more come in and then some leave, and then how many can the market handle. But in terms of enterprise, I couldn't tell you today who's going to use it for what. I honestly don't know, and I'm excited to see. It could turn into all 5G private LTE, or maybe turn into generally, it might just be GAA. I just don't. The market's going to have to take this where it wants to go.
Absolutely. Now, you mentioned earlier other countries, and I think that this is like we're going to the U.S., but there is much more, and there are a lot of other work. For instance, in the UK, they were there talking about having the licenses very tiny, so it's a very different model, and which is more tied to location, real estate, rather than having a carrier that provides national coverage, which you still need, obviously, for mobility. How do you see that going, sort of like beyond the FCC, sort of like worldwide?
Sure. I mean, I think that the model that we're building and then have adopted for CBRS can be something that other countries can look to. I know the UK, and I had a chance to visit over the summer and talk to their folks, and their chief spectrum policy guy was in town in Washington, D.C. this week, and we further our conversation. I'm open to and I'm excited to see what happens from their new service. I'm a little skeptical, and I have a healthy skepticism towards it working, and I don't know that it would work in something so diverse as the United States. And so I just don't know. They talk about having licenses based on per building, and I just don't know that would be something that would work. I mean, even at the heart of CBRS in the original, it was census tracts, which was not a building by building structure. So we're not ready for that, and I'm not sure that model would work. I think that resolving some of those issues may lead to either harmful interference to some entities or a band that's not as used as much as possible. And so I worry about that, especially on a prime band where I know that their wireless providers are going to need more 5G spectrum than they've allocated. So I think it's an interesting experiment. I'm interested to see what it turns out to be. I'm not sure. I'm a little skeptical at the current moment.
Absolutely. But you could have a different types of like CBRS type of structure where you have multi-layer. And I guess there's a lot of
that part is right. Yes, it's really just I think it's just a different size. How big are the blocks, and they're building by building. I think is a very difficult one.
Now, one thing that to me just seems like the CBRS structure would be absolutely perfect for millimeter wave, because the propagation is so different, so that you can have like indoor use and outdoor. So if you just license it just seems like it just lends itself to it.
In some instances, yes. I think you could see a scenario where it's used in 37, and maybe, depending on how 37 is intertwined with 39, you can see something like this being part of that equation. We certainly have to protect DoD and some of the pieces that we've allowed them to stay in those bands. So yeah, I could see that. In terms of other bands, we're clearing them and licensing them off. So I don't know that you need a CBRS model, right? We've cleared because it's already been cleared and it's completely licensable, and so I don't know that we need the we're not protecting incumbents. Could you introduce an unlicensed service potentially in some of these bands in the future? Maybe, but we're not there yet.
Yeah, well, and I guess that you still can use the secondary market to do
the
that,
secondary
right?
market
So you can just
disaggregation and different mechanisms to share the different pieces. Yes.
Yeah, you don't. So basically, you don't need to have a regulatory framework to support it if you don't have the incumbents.
That's right.
Yeah. What about the 6 gigahertz?
6 gigahertz in my mind is something that we're really working aggressive on. We have to. I don't know that we're going to need. We're struggling with what the format's going to be on the indoor outdoor issue. Not struggling. I think we need to make some decisions, and I'm pushing that we don't need a frequency coordinator for some of the indoor use and limited just indoor use. I want to make sure we have a fulsome plate of unlicensed services in 6 gigahertz, and we'll just have to work through some of those details.
And what about the incumbents there?
They will be protected. We will protect them. I think that license has been introduced in a number of bands and has to cause harmful interference to them. And so we're very mindful of the utilities, public safety. Some of the wireless providers are there doing backhaul. We'll be protecting them, and the services offering. unlicensed is low power, and it can fit in here nicely without causing interference to those providers.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's going to be great news. Well, thank you so much,
Thank
Michael,
you.
for talking
It's
to
a
me.
pleasure. Thank you so very
Thank
much for
you.
your time.
Thanks.